Here with you for our post-game report from Los Angeles at the Memorial Coliseum. Kevin Redfern, Matt Venezia. Much different matchup in a ranked contest for the Sun Devils compared to a week ago in Tempe when ASU lost pretty brutally to the Utah Utes. This time around, the final score being 42-25 against the number 6 team in the country. Kevin, the Sun Devils really held their own in the first half, only trailing 21-17, but the second half looked like a completely different team.
And college football just tends to surprise you like that. I'm pretty sure almost everyone was expecting the game to be a blowout pretty much from the start. So, of course, when you expect that, of course, we get a football game. ASU looked great in the first half. Emory Jones looked like a night and a day difference from last week against Utah. The offense looked more developed and the defense had a motor. And then by halftime, a 4-point difference really reflected the football game we had seen thus far, but obviously it did not carry over.
And to me, it looked like the Sun Devils' best first half of football we've seen all season. And the biggest thing is you talked about Emory Jones. He looked like the starting quarterback the Sun Devils were expecting from week one on to this point, based on what he looked like at Florida, being a true dual-threat quarterback, choosing when to run the football, and actually having constructed plays for him to run the ball. And that's exactly what happened. Now, what do you think made it so hard for the Sun Devils to get going in the second half once it seemed like the Sun Devils were in that game and going to make it a tight one to the end?
Well, USC clearly made some adjustments, and I think that's what the ASU offense and Glenn Thomas saw in the second half, because whatever they had working in the first half did not work at all in the second half. Both in the run game and in the pass game. So it's just safe to say that USC did a better job of going to the drawing boards and making those adjustments that we did not see ASU make.
Now, we're definitely giving the Sun Devils credit for hanging in there with the number 6 team in the country, but when you have a Heisman favorite and Caleb Williams on your team, he'll definitely take advantage of certain opportunities. And, going 27 of 37, almost 350 yards passing, 3 through the air, 1 on the ground. I mean, he was just tough for the Sun Devils, and he had a couple acrobatic plays, really escaping out of pockets where it seemed like the Sun Devils' defensive line was going to bring him down, but he was truly unstoppable tonight.
And we mentioned the 4-point halftime deficit. And those 4 points were really told by 3 plays. And like you mentioned, Caleb Williams being an escape artist. First, it was Joe Moore missing a tackle in the backfield. Then it was Trevez Moore. And then on a potential safety just in this end zone right here, Caleb Williams with a jump pass that went over Ro Torrance's head when he wasn't even looking. Had those 3 plays not happened, 2 of them, mind you, were on third downs, there might be a different score heading into halftime. But in reality, 3 big hiccups for ASU turned into 3 massive plays for USC.
And it is also worth mentioning that the Sun Devils, with having to deal with Caleb Williams, it was USC who had the only punt of the first half after the Sun Devils defense was finally able to make a stop. And on the Sun Devils offensive side, 3 drives, 3 sets of points. They found 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, and 1 helping through the ground was also ex-Valade. Emory Jones had a rushing touchdown, and it just seemed like the Sun Devils were really clicking up until then. That second half came into play. But a really big struggle as we now transition to what USC was able to do. The Sun Devils offensive line kind of struggled tonight. 5 sacks, bringing Emory Jones down.
And just like every other part of the ball game, this was a tale of 2 halves for the offensive line. In the first half, everyone up in the press box was talking, wow, look at how developed this ASU offensive line is, giving a pocket. And that's with a rotation at left tackle, too, with Isaiah Glass and Emmett Boley. It looked great. The second half, obviously a lot different. Emory Jones started off the second half something like 2 of 7 for 17 yards and a pair of sacks after throwing 117 yards in the first half. He had a 200-something rating in the first half compared to an 8.2 rating last week. We saw in the second half, largely because of that offensive line, it looks more like the Utah game.
Now the Sun Devils able to use the help of a Tamarcus Davis interception in the end zone down on that side of the field. Really had a chance to turn the momentum of the game and make a big stand like that. But other than that, the defense really not able to control that USC offense that led by Caleb Williams. It was also notable that Jordan Addison, over 100 yards receiving. I mean, that receiving core really helped Caleb Williams out when the pressure was getting to him. He was making plays left and right.
It was nice to see Tamarcus Davis make a play like that after struggling, coming off an injury in fall camp. But you're right, the defense didn't have an answer. Neither did the offense. It seemed like they were matching punch for punch in the first half. But at the end of the day, USC, I should say, was just more talented. ASU might have had some battles won at the line of scrimmage, but the skill guys won it for USC. The talented receiving core, the Heisman candidate quarterback, ASU was outmatched.
Third downs have been a problem all year for the Arizona State defense. Getting off the field in timely situations, plenty of those, especially in the first half. It's worth mentioning that the Sun Devils really set up USC for a lot of third and longs and still couldn't get off the field. 8 of 9 were the Trojans tonight when it comes to third downs, and that was something that was especially notable against Utah and clearly carried over into this game.
And how do you coach it? I mean, it's tough. This has been a problem that ASU has faced all year long, not getting off the field on third downs, even when they say they got the other team working behind the chains. Like we mentioned earlier, 2 of those plays were third and long. They were severe hiccups by the ASU team. It's coach speak, but it comes down to execution. Who's going to make the big play? Who's not going to miss a tackle before the first down marker? And for ASU, we just do not see anyone stepping up to make those plays.
We talked about it a few seconds ago, but 2 rushing touchdowns for the Sun Devils today. Valade, he had a receiving touchdown as well, and then Emory had the other rushing score from 6 yards out. ASU ran for a total of 88 yards. To the USC almost 140. So obviously an improvement though for the Sun Devils, but the running game was clearly being used by both sides.
Yeah, I mean, you could say 80-something yards is an improvement over 6, but not ideal still. Valade did start the season with 3 straight games of 100-plus yards, now 2 in a row where he has not met that mark. Daniel Ngata still yet to hit 60 yards rushing in a game on the season. Not where they want to be. Valade showed some flashes in the first half, and the run blocking did look somewhat more sophisticated than usual. But we heard about it in the press conference there with Thompson. This is a run-to-pass offense. They need to establish it, and it needs to have continued success throughout the game.
Someone who had a great performance today, probably not as expected, Brian Thompson, 5 catches, 82 yards. He grew up about 10 minutes away here, and he was saying that it was such an awesome moment for him individually to have a performance like this at the Coliseum where he grew up not too far away. What do you make of his performance? And it seemed like Emory was able to find him when he needed and was really the star receiver for the Sun Devils tonight.
It's a long time coming for Brian Thompson. Just a couple of months ago at the beginning of fall camp, a lot of people would have had him as the #1 receiver on ASU. It has not panned out that way. The Utah transfer has acted relatively quietly this year, but obviously this game is a step in the right direction. The talent is there. He was a high-profile transfer not too long ago. We could see another resurgence of Brian Thompson here throughout the rest of the season.
So moving on from this now, the Sun Devils, for the first time since 1976, 1-4 on the season, 0-2 now in Pac-12 play, and the schedule doesn't get really any easier as ASU heads home to Tempe to see the Washington Huskies, who lost this weekend here actually in California, in Pasadena, not too far away, against UCLA, the big upset over there. But obviously Washington ranked coming into that contest. We'll see where they end up in this new AP poll, but no doubt another tough contest for the Sun Devils in 3 consecutive weeks.
Yeah, both of these teams look a lot different both on the field and in the coaching booth than from last year's game when ASU came back in the rain in Seattle. So it's going to be tough to compare those 2 matchups, but obviously Washington, a really talented team offensively and a really well-coached team defensively, so will be another tough one.
So a 3-score loss for the Sun Devils tonight. Take what you want from that, but a much better performance by this Arizona State team, most notably the offense, something that maybe could be built on moving forward throughout these weeks as Sean Aguano still getting comfortable as the interim head coach with the Sun Devils. But this is all we have for you here from the Coliseum. A really awesome trip for Kevin and myself to be here for a game that the Sun Devils really made it interesting with in that first half of play. But we're about wrapped up here in LA. For Kevin Redfern, Matt Venezia, the rest of the House of Sparky crew, keeping you up to date here on this trip. The Sun Devils falling 42-25. We'll see you next week with the Huskies coming to Tempe.